Please welcome Darrin Lee. Darrin's going to talk about using big data on the internet to track farm efficiency and productivity from his farm in way to buggery Western Australia somewhere. And you're a long way out and you've faced some real challenges. So please welcome Darrin Lee.
Thanks very much, Mike. For those that looked at the book, there's a little photo in there, and I'm the one on the right. That's my faithful companion, Jeffrey the dog, on the left. I really do appreciate the invite to come over here and speak. And Mike said this morning, back in 1999, there was a young farmers forum. And I was very fortunate to actually go on one of those, I'll go to that actual forum, and to come here nearly 20 years later and actually speak. It actually happens. So I'd urge and encourage you to keep that network, and in 20 years' time, you stand up here and present and really connect with young people or the younger generation and move forward. I haven't always been a grower, a farmer. I was actually a banker, and don't confuse that word. It's all right. I used to shuffle money. I moved money in and I moved money out. And there's something actually quite cathartic about growing food. It's a really exciting industry. So I worked for NAB for 15 years, an agribusiness manager. I was very fortunate to meet my wife in a place called Three Springs, which is about 50 k's south of Mininu. And so I went from marrying a farmer's daughter and went from a banker to a grower. So we farm 15 kilometres northeast of Mininu. It's 400 kilometres north of Perth, about 16,500 acres. We grow wheat, barley, lupins, canola, lupins. We run 4,000 sheep. Our country is mostly red loam and heavier clays, and we like to think we get 300 mils. Doesn't happen very often, but we certainly are this year. It's absolutely magnificent. That photo there wasn't in a poorer year, but it wasn't a bad year. But this year, if we took the same photo, I'm still grinning. For us, it's all about the weather. We get it when we don't want it, or we sweat on the fact we haven't quite got it yet. Simply no rain means no grain, and I'm the eternal optimist. But one statement I'll make here today, and it's 100% correct, is tomorrow is one day closer to the day it will rain. So let's talk about reality and perception. Smartphones, magnificent thing. The photo there on the left was taken on the 19th of July, 5 o'clock. The photo on your right was taken on the 21st of July, at 20 past 5. We got 28 millimetres of rain, and this really demonstrates the elasticity of our crops today. I'd written that crop off on the left. I actually told my neighbours that the season was stuffed. I've had enough of this farming, it's driving me mad. And look how things change, and that actual crop, which is GM, went a bit over a tonne. So, digital agriculture. I began that journey about 5 years ago, and I've learnt 3 things. And if you walk away today and think about it, you need to have a value proposition, and we do need connectivity. We really need connectivity. And we also need this catch-call thing, and I got this at the Digital Ag Conference in Sydney, the word called intraoperability. Now, intraoperability is something that you can use a platform to work all different sources. So if you've got a John Deere tractor or a New Holland tractor or whatever tractor, you need to have interoperability so it all talks together. Now, whether that's way of APIs or other coding that I'm not really familiar with, you get an expert to sort that out and devise these dashboards. So we did the drone thing. They fell out of the sky and burnt lots of money. It was really good fun. But at the end of the day, bottom line, what did it do for me as a business? It's great for small plot trials, germination, locating weeds. But our SP sprayer can spray something like 700 hectares in a day, and my drone couldn't keep up. And it was a good drone. It was 30 grand. Did 90 kilometres an hour. Was up in the air for 45 minutes, and we had it at as far as 16 kilometres. So it really pushed me into a space where I am today. Instead of burning money, keep it simple, stupid, and what's real, what's relative, and what actually hits the ground. So I got involved with an app and a guy that didn't even know wheat from lupins. And we put this thing together called Crop Manager, and this is actually on my phone, and it tells me all the information that I really need. It gives me all the paddocks. You move around, the paddocks move up and down the screen, all that sort of caper. And it can be as simple as having a moisture probe and a rain bucket and linking back in through your connectivity and knowing where the things are. And with that, that's through just telemetry, sends it back to my phone. There's a moisture probe out in the paddock, and there's a rain bucket. And digital agriculture can be as simple as a rain bucket and just collecting information seamlessly. How many times you've got your little elders or your landmark notebook and you write it in there, you forget, oh, did I tip the gauge out? Did my sister-in-law give me the information? This is actually seamless and does it all by itself. So we need accessible information. So with this thing we devised, it does the phenology, complete phenology of the plant. And any one time there'll be a red line in there showing where we were. And if it's quite a little bit out of sync, we can move that red line, whether it's at Orn emergence or whatever it was. We've got the life cycle of what my weeds and pests are. And it becomes interpretive so that it actually remembers all the weather conditions, all the phenology perspective, and actually sends my smartphone a message. Say, Darrin, 4 years ago you got belted by Heliothis at this point in time because the weather lined up, the phenology lined up. And we can't have our eyes and ears at everything at one stage. So it actually sends my phone a message. Check for Heliothis. So we need simplicity at our fingertips. And that's the growing season rainfall. And that's what I mean about keeping it simple. You might only need a rain bucket, but it saved me. We've got 9 rain gauges on our property. Take me an hour and a half, 2 hours to go around and check them all. And the funny part is, just to keep an eye on technology, I've still got a plastic rain gauge next to my rain bucket that sends it, just as a measure occasionally. I caught someone out the other day. They said, how much rain did you have, Darrin? And I said, 22.4 mil. Have you checked the gauge? Nah. And she walked over there, she's doing a bit of a story on us. There's 23 in here. It's good enough for me. So we can monitor the soil moisture, the available water, and we have our probes down to, the main ones down to 1.5 metres. But we've learnt that we only need to have them down to 800 mil, so we've actually adjusted that. And we can actually see where the actual water is in the profile, how much our water holding capacity is, how much we're using. And as I say, you've got to keep it simple, it's got to be real and it's got to be relative. And the funny part is, in real good years that we're having this year, I don't look at my rain bucket very often. But I tell you what, in a dry year, I'm really conscious of where it's at. And for me, this was the kicker. This was the absolute, what did I use the term as? Value proposition. Farming's a real confidence game. Maximise on your returns, minimise on your inputs. With this artificial intelligence and all that, you look at that green line, the blue line's the drained upper limit, so if we're outside that, we've just got buckets of water. There's a stress line and an actual wilting point, an actual. And what we did with this project, we actually could push that actual line, where are we here? Technology? That line there, right out. And what actually happened there was, I would put in a date, say the 30th of September, and I'd know if I had enough water in the bucket or the plant was going to come under pressure, and it was a confidence feeling. It was an unconfident feeling if there wasn't enough water in the bucket, rest assured. But, that's what farming's all about. In 2015, we didn't apply 1 kilo of urea across our property. And that decision was against my agronomist's advice. But it was based on some artificial intelligence, knowledge of nutrition in the soil, how the season was, where the phenology was, and what was required to finish on a lower yield. So there's the value proposition. We had 150 tonne of urea sitting in the shed, had another 80 tonne ordered that I hadn't used, and guess what? This year we're having one of our best years ever. I've let that 150 tonne out of the shed. I've used the 80 tonne that I'd already priced the previous year and grabbed some more. So this is the real kicker for me. I also think you've got to test things. And that predicted line there says about 275 tonne, 280 tonne. the artificial intelligence within this actual app was giving me, analysing the heat units, the water units, all that sort of stuff, and said we were going to grow, 275 tonne or thereabouts. So I wanted to measure that, see how good it was. And we've lined it up against yield, profit and all this other stuff. And that's actually what we delivered, 274.3 tonne. This stuff started to get merit. This really started to have merit. So where do I go from that? I got into a crazy world. I don't know where the hours in the day go, but I ran into a woman called Annie Brocks. And Annie has actually put together Wi-Fi networks in the remotest parts of Africa. She has set up a telco in Norway. She's Norwegian. She set up a Wi-Fi network across all the hills and all that sort of cover on a railway system through Norway. If you've been to Norway, they're not hills, they're mountains. So if she can do that, Australia's a big flat pizza. We're easy. So what we've done there, and she's got some, if you don't know what you're doing, you partner up with people who know what they're doing and you get that trust. She learns off me, I learn off her. And we've now got setting up a complete digital Wi-Fi network across 16,500 acres. Speed, we didn't have any upload speed, we didn't have any download speed. Annie, how do we fix this? Oh, we get one of these black boxes and we have servers in your headers and we take them out and we put them in your sprayers as well. Or keep one in the sprayer, take them out and put them into the seeders. We have one in my truck, my road train, I have one in my ute. We simplify the process. John will get into a tractor and will say, are you in school block paddock? And he'll go, yes. Are you spreading 2.5 tonne of lime sand? Yes. Is the job being completed? Yes. As soon as that's done, it comes into my mainframe computer in the house, collected the information. It's actual, it's real. You'd be surprised, we've only got one sort of fertiliser in the shed, compound fertiliser called DAPS. And under the old system, if you put a capital D, a small d, you spelt it wrong, we suddenly had 10 different types of fertiliser in the shed. You've got to keep it simple. We've got to keep it so it's easy to, the guys don't want to be typing in what they're doing. It's got to be pre-populated. And I'll get a phone call or I'll get a two-way message, Darren, we don't have any 404 canola in the system. So you're planting it. He said, I know that, but it's not in your system. Give me 5 minutes, change it over in the ute and it'll sync right through our system. So it looks complex, but it's actually quite simple. So this Wi-Fi network, that's actually our complete network right across the farm. Next week we'll put up 2 big 20-metre towers and another one up on a big hill. And what we did, this was the computer model overlaid by the testing that we did. We actually got a 16-metre mast and we put it on the back of a Land Cruiser and we parked it everywhere we needed to park it where we thought we'd have a tower. And then we went around another ute with a little handheld gadget and it gave us green's really good, yellow's not bad, and orange. But as long as we've got coverage across everything, it actually works. And Annie, who's really is quite an amazing person, devised these things called an Origo remote. And not every grower has the most modern fleet of machinery. So we needed something we could just put in, plug in. If it's got a CAN bus system, this is what I was talking about, interoperability. That little box there on the left can talk to sensors, it can talk to tractors, it can talk to weather stations. We spent about $10,000 on our first weather station. We spent about $5,000 on the next. Technology is getting cheaper. And then this is our first iteration of all the dashboards that we've put together. So there's actually moisture probe, weather station. We've got about 60 paddocks or whatever. So we can go and have a look and see what's actually happening. Dashboards for machines. You can do all these analytics, how much fuel we're burning. I'll actually send my smartphone a message so I can send it to my sister-in-law, or actually better than that, just send the message to my sister-in-law. The headers will need refuelling in 2 hours. That's how complicated you could make it or simple you wanted it. I can ring my John Deere guy and say, we've got a problem with the 9630 tractor. Do you want to plug in and see what we're doing? And he can actually do some advising from there remotely. But remember, if we don't have connectivity, it doesn't work. So as I said, this is only the first iteration of what we're doing with it. And we'll build on that because it's all about experience and it's got to be real, it's got to be relative. I don't want information just for the sake of information, I want to make better decisions. So where they've planted, what they've put out, hours, servicing. It'll send my smartphone a message. Your header needs an oil change in the next 15 hours. Things like that. Dashboards for paddocks, how much rainfall, how much water's in the system for a week. Here, the weather is done for the month. Wind, rainfall, delta T factors, all that sort of stuff. The year, you can do an analysis of what you want for the year. Dashboard cameras. We've got a fuel tank at home that holds 50,000 litres. I'd hate for someone to come up on a weekend and decide they want to borrow some but not replace it. So I've just thought, well, you know, we've got cameras up. If you drive up our driveway now, guess what? You're on film. In addition to that, monitoring of stock, you can do that. Monitoring of tanks. I'll be in our road train in town and I can actually turn a camera on a 120 tonne fuel bin, and if I want to grab that pie on the way out because I'm hungry, or grab something from the roadhouse, which my wife would kill me if she knew I was doing, I can actually look inside the bin and know I've got time to go and do so. But I also know if the bin's full, the headers are stopped and I've got to get back quick smart. So there's lots of things that we're learning and doing and maximising our use. We run stock and livestock. We run about 4,500 sheep. We go around and we check tanks. I love fishing. I'm very lucky to have a boat. I love going fishing, going across to the coast. We're only 60 k's from the coast and we've got the Abrolhos Islands across from West Australia we can go across to and things like that. I hate going back in summer checking tanks. And livestock, you've got to look after. I can actually do that remotely. What's the level of the tank? Oh, it's not very good. I'm not driving 60 k's home in 45 degrees, even if I have a couple of beers when I get over there. I need to turn the pump on. Grab my phone, turn the pump on. I'll have a beer here. So it is endless what you can do. It's about thinking of what you want to do and how you want to do it. And as I said, and I'll come back to it again, it's got to have a value proposition. It's got to be bottom line, make you $1 or make you more efficient. I want to add some precision to decision at the end of the day. I want to get rid of duplication of process. I hate filling out stuff and putting it in my computer. How many hours have you sat there next front of your computer and filled out records for paddock PAM or whatever you want to do? I want to better manage my time. I want to make better decisions. And you know what? At the end of the day, I'm just a grower with a few ideas. But it's about partnering up with some great people who work really well together and getting their honesty and their trust and bring them into your circle and actually working together. I never thought I'd be up doing this sort of stuff, but I had a few ideas and I got hooked up with some people that I really trusted. There's a guy, Dr. Matt Wall, he's the same age as me, he's 50. He's in Boston and he'll Skype when we've got connectivity. And we'll talk about what's going on and how we want to do it. And he wouldn't know a wheat plant from a lupin plant, but he can do APIs, he can code, he can do anything he wants. I just have to feed him the right information and give him what I want out of it. You need to be open source as against closed loop. I don't want to get tied up in something I'm locked into. Open source is a good way of being. Connectivity, I'll bring up a couple of points. If you don't have it, this technology is like having a Land Cruiser ute in your shed and it doesn't have any wheels. You can't drive it anywhere. It's no good to you. You've got connectivity. You might have, where's Lala? You might have NBN. They give you a Ferrari, but guess what? Only comes with 1 litre of fuel. So you can't really demonstrate what you want to get out of it. We pay for 5 gigs of satellite stuff a month, $250 a month. And when I go a bit crazy at home and download lots of stuff, sometimes the bill gets a little bit larger. The kids come home from school, same thing. Wasn't internet work here, Dad? Oh, it's just one of those things. We're rural and remote, but I wouldn't change that in a minute. Digital agriculture. Where will it be in 5 years or 10 years? It won't be called digital agriculture. It'll just be called farming. And that certainly opens up better doors and better things to do with your family, kids and all that sort of stuff. And as I said, I really do enjoy fishing. And it gives us more time to enjoy the things we really enjoy. That's my young fella Courtney, who's 14. And that day, that was about a 14 kilo Dewey. And the only problem with that photo is you can't move his elbow across to see the grin on his face. So I love farming, I love what I do, but I love adding back to agriculture. Growers are one of those people that, you know, they'll naturally start talking, oh, where are you from? What do you do? And you talk to each other. You're involved with companies like CVH in WA or GRDC or any of those things. You can actually ring in agriculture the managing director. You can ring the CEO, you can ring the chairman. I used to work for the bank. Do you think I could ring a senior manager? No, doesn't work like that. Same with Telstra. Got this beautiful email from Telstra the other day apologising for my interruption in my email. It was signed off by the head of services. I'm still going to speak to that woman from head of services. It'll take me some time to track it down, but I'm going to get there and put my point across. Because if we don't say something, guess what? You know, it's not good enough that we just say, oh, it's all right, we're rural and remote. Okay? So with that, I'll close off and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. I think the discussion at the bar with Darrin will be really interesting. That was that we don't have any questions. We'll do that for later. That was really good. Really fascinating conversation, and we let that go way longer than it should, and that's why I'm not getting any questions. But it was a real example of applying the technology to solve your day-to-day problems. Can I ask Sean and Sally to come forward? I think we might just wrap up the day, and I've just asked Sean and Sally to think for a couple of minutes about what they saw for the day and what they saw in terms of, you know, conclusions that you might be able to draw at the end of Friday. So why don't you come into the middle so the people down there can see you. We might turn that screen off. Thank you. We've got this. That's great. Rather difficult looking into that light when it's on, though, isn't it? So it's better when it's off. So I think Sal went first the first time. So Sean, can you go?
Okay. So, will you be a victim or a beneficiary of transformative technology? Are you forming ideas on how it'll work for you, what skills you'll need, and how you'll afford it? Does data have a value? And how will we manage that to benefit your industries, yourselves, and your consumers without any of the negatives like privacy concerns and that sort of thing? Are you starting to think of yourselves as service providers, not just producers? And I have to say, my wife would be horrified if she knew that she was being invoked as the Bondi housewife. I'd be in so much trouble. But you know, the reality is it's not just trippy, hippie, yummy mummies in the inner city in Sydney. It could be middle-class families in Tamworth, Toowoomba or Townsville. You know, when I first started working at Landline, those sorts of things were kind of on the margin, but now, you know, in the last 15 years, I've seen them really become mainstream. People are concerned about sustainability and ethical production and all that sort of thing. So, also, what can you learn from other industries and possibly avoid the mistakes that they made? R&D corporations, okay, it's pretty clear that they're after a return on their investment. They're going to do their best to provide new technologies that you can use, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to use them. And what about the role of government? We heard about possibly government paying for data and mobile technology. That's up to you how you're going to lobby for that. And finally, the NBN, don't get too bent out of shape about not having it in your rural communities. I live in Bondi. It's the Prime Minister's electorate, and I don't have it.
So,
Okay. All right, I'm conscious I'm just about the last thing between you and a beer, so I will be quick. I guess following up on Sean's point, I think that's what really struck me. You know, disruption is coming, transformative technologies are coming. We don't have a choice in that. The choice that we have is whether we win or lose. I think the other big take home for me today was that the next big thing won't be one thing. It will be a combination of innovations. And I think for me, it's that kind of idea of that interoperability, you know, is the hardest word in the world to say, Darrin. Yeah, that's right. We could do that. So it's that getting things to talk together and getting things to work together. You know, how do we ensure we can get a spare part 3D printed, get it delivered to the farm by drone, so our driverless header can harvest a durum crop grown with the benefit of sensors, and then see that crop turn into pasta that the consumer can track back to the paddock where it was grown. You know, to me, that's seeing all those things come together. And finally, it's all about trust. You know, trust in the data, trust in technology, and most importantly, trust of the consumer. And technology can help us build that trust through things like markers, just as it can help us shatter it through things like social media if we don't use them effectively. And I think final thought from me is really critically, how do we avoid a Kodak moment? How do we avoid missing Ag's big moment?
So all of this detail and all of this connectivity and all of this technology, it's actually about running our farms and our rural businesses better. But it's also about connecting with the world, and Sean's Bondi or Tamworth or Townsville or, you know, housewife that really wants to demand wants to demand what's going on our farms and what we're doing about it. So there's a really interesting change, and it's right here, it's right now. We're moving from this development phase into a whole new phase. So at the end of Friday, start to explain to ourselves, what does that look like? And perhaps we might even resolve that over a beer shortly. The University of New England, God love them, have shouted some drinks. And that's the damnedest thing. So we should be extremely grateful. So please adjourn, and thank you for a really interesting and really challenging day. Head to the bar and have a drink on the University of New England, which is very kind of them. And thank you to Sean and Sal, and thank you to all the speakers.